first things first. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. This looks like circus time here.
Yeah, because you didn't do one of your you have one pre-show task, Jenna. Jenna, this morning you're like, who has my notes? Who has my coffee? Your only pre-show task is to cut your own straws.
Toronto
you couldn't
Raptors
do it this morning.
They got to make smaller
win game
straws.
number 3. Steph Curry explodes
there you are. We got a
47.
big show for you today. If you stayed up and watched, fantastic. If you didn't, we're going to tell you all about it. Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Klay Thompson was a game-time decision, and the decision was no-go. That meant the brunt of the work fell on the shoulders of one Steph Curry, and he delivered 47 points in this one, but those 47, as impressive as they were, weren't enough as Toronto wins at 123-109. Kawhi Leonard led the way for Toronto with 30 points, and he got help. Every starter for the Raptors scored at least 17 points in this one as Toronto takes a 2-1 series lead. Here is Kyle Lowry after the game.
You lose an all-NBA type basketball player in Klay and an all-star. It definitely, it changes their team. But, I mean, Steph had an unbelievable game. 47 points is pretty impressive. But, we just went out there and did our job.
We're going to compete no matter what happens. You can count on that. So just got to execute and play smarter. And no matter who's out there on the floor, do what you got to do to win.
No one cares that guys are hurt. Everybody want to see us lose. So I'm sure people are happy they're hurt. We just got to continue to battle and win the next game, go back to Toronto, win Game 5, come back to Oracle, win Game 6, and then celebrate. Fun times ahead.
He's got it all worked out for himself. Mapped out the rest of the series. Looks like it's going to play out in the Warriors' favor, according to Draymond Green. Nick, let me ask you, was Game 3 more about what the Raptors did well or Steph having virtually no help?
Steph was sensational, and his other teammates couldn't pick up the slack. And we'll get more to Steph later, but I want to focus on the Raptors. You mentioned it. All 5 starters with 17-plus points. Everyone that played for the Raptors shot at least 50% from the field. Think about that. There only 7 guys took shots. All of them shot 50% or better. We spent a long time yesterday talking about in relation to Kawhi Leonard.
We were trying to find someone.
Right.
Don't shoot above 50%.
Right. We talked about how hard it is over the course of a finals for a guy to shoot even close to 50, that you would take the mid-40s. The story of last night's game was the Raptors, everyone showed up. Everyone did their job. They won every single quarter, and multiple times Oracle was roaring as if the Warriors had the lead because they had cut it to single digits. And there were 4 separate occasions in that second half where the Warriors cut it to 7 and were a possession away from being a possession away. And every time the Toronto Raptors responded with a mini flurry of their own to keep the Warriors just out of arm's reach, because Toronto knew and Golden State knew and that crowd knew what we were discussing before the show. Toronto couldn't win the series last night, but they could have lost it.
Yes.
If Toronto had lost that game with no Klay, no KD, no Looney, Boogie being as limited as he was, then the Warriors are minus 500 favorites this morning. They feel great about where they are. And so Toronto, if it would have gotten to 4, I think you would have seen some nerves. You would have seen some, oh, wait, are we going to blow this? Because they had been in control the whole game. They kept them just out of arm's reach, and Kawhi was the best Raptor, but every other Raptor did their job and did it the best they've done this series.
But I'll ask you, CC, the same thing I asked Nick. Was that about how well the Raptors were playing, or was it because the Warriors didn't really have anyone to defend them?
Well, let's go back to game number 2. Why did the Raptors lose that game? Not only that third quarter where they couldn't score, couldn't make a bucket at the beginning of that third quarter, they couldn't make open shots. I told you guys yesterday, if the Raptors get the same shots that they got in game number 1, which they won, game number 2, shots they didn't make, I said that they would be happy the rest of the series. Those are open shots. NBA players are going to make those shots, and that's what Toronto did. So for me, it's about them being able to make the shots. I didn't think Golden State was going to be able to win this game without Klay. They had a sensational effort led by Steph Curry. I mean, a record-breaking performance there. The effort was there, but when you can't score the basketball in the NBA playoffs against a quality team, which they're playing in Toronto, they ran out of people. And last night, you could see it. They were challenged outside of Steph Curry to be able to find someone to be able to score the basketball.
So we mentioned Klay Thompson actually did not play last night. They're going to wait and see what he can do in Game 4. What did they miss more from Klay last night? Was it his offense or his defense?
Going into the game, I would have said they're going to miss his offense more than anything else. Going into the game, the reason that I said I will bet the Raptors that the Warriors cannot win without Klay is because I didn't think they'd be able to score enough. They scored 109 points in Game 1. They scored 109 points in Game 2. They scored 109 points last night. To me, where they truly missed Klay because Steph carried such a load on offense, yeah, they would have liked Klay's shooting. 6 of 22 from 3 for non-Steph Warriors. But Klay's defense was desperately missed. Klay had guarded Kawhi in Game 2, which allowed Draymond to play more help side defense. Now, Draymond's got to guard Kawhi. Now, you don't have people meeting Ibaka or Gasol or Siakam at the rim. The trickle-down effect of not having Klay's defense out there, which, by the way, had Klay forced his way into the lineup, he might have been able to hit shots. He wouldn't have had that impact defensively. He wouldn't have been able to move defensively. But when you see the Warriors scored 109, that's almost always enough for them to win a playoff game. It's the allowing 123. So I think they actually, oddly enough, missed his defense more than anything last night.
I'm going to go on the offensive side because we saw the other players struggle. We saw them continuing to be left alone. Draymond Green early in the game, first shot he took, they dared him to take it from the three-point line. Shot an air ball. So for me, I believe on the offensive end, because Draymond doesn't take that shot, he resets the offense, allows himself to get a better shot. Iguodala, he struggled. He made a couple shots, but he still struggled. He has no intermediate game. So on the offensive end, when they tried to clamp down on Steph, but when Steph got gassed. And there were a couple times that they could use someone else to either bring the ball up, half court, and someone to be able to knock down a shot. To me, Klay is a spectacular player. On the offensive end last night, you could see how much they missed him, the lack of spacing, and just the lack of offensive confidence that the rest of the Warriors are that they don't have.
And from a scoring standpoint, to your point, C, the person who scored the most points last night's game, obviously Steph Curry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Raptor. They had the next 5 leading scorers in the game. Team effort led by Kawhi on that side, and it squandered one of the greatest Steph Curry games I've ever seen.
Long day at work? Tough day at school? Still stuck at the office? Treat yourself to the meal you deserve on demand from your favorite restaurant. Restaurants come to you with DoorDash. DoorDash connects you to all your favorite restaurants in your city. Ordering is easy. Just use the DoorDash app and choose what you want to eat, and your Dasher will bring it to you, wherever you are. Not only is that burger place you love on DoorDash already, but over 310,000 other amazing restaurants are too. DoorDash connects you with door-to-door delivery in over 3,300 cities and all 50 states across the United States and Canada. Order from your local go-tos or choose from your favorite chains like Chipotle, Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, and the Cheesecake Factory. Right now, our listeners can get $5 off their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code FTF. That's $5 off your first order when you download the DoorDash app from the App Store and enter promo code FTF. Again, that's promo code FTF for $5 off your first order from DoorDash. Back to the show.
Back here, first things first, with some highlights presented by Hilton. Get a price match guarantee when you book at Hilton.com. NBA Finals Game 3. Steph behind the back, not once, twice before drilling the transition 3 here.
That's what they call a shooter's bounce, Jenna. The ball bounces so soft because the rotation, the backspin on it, a lot like Kawhi did Game 7 against Philadelphia. Off the front of the rim, feathery touch.
Soft rims at Oracle, too.
Quinn Cook thought he had an easy bucket. Danny Green says, nah, swats the shot off the glass.
This was part of a back-to-back sequence of the Warriors thinking they had fast break layups. Danny Green gets one. Serge gets one. Serge was spectacular defensively in this game.
That was a championship effort. The intensity for which they're playing at. Danny Green's not athletic, not giving up on the play. And as you mentioned, Serge Ibaka was nice a couple times.
Kawhi splits the D, dishes it to Fred VanVleet for the dagger 3.
The game ender right there. The game-ending shot. That moment forward, take the starters out, let them rest. Good night.
Van Fleet is the answer, though. If you are a shooter, knocked down, and you are struggling with your shot,
have a baby.
Have a baby. But he need to be a boy and name him Freddie Jr.
Okay, have a baby boy, name him after yourself. That's Chris Carter's advice.
Finally, Korean baseball. They say use your head. It paid off.
Yeah.
The ball bounces
I ain't
off
the
his head
daddy of
into
that
the
there,
glove.
knucklehead.
That's
Literally,
that.
knucklehead.
Listen, I think that shouldn't be an out. That's like it hitting the ground. The hitting the player in the head and bouncing to another guy shouldn't be an out. Just like if it hits the ground and bounces to another guy, it's not an out.
Let me tell you something. Y'all need to check on that baseball. That dude got a head on him. That baseball ran into a collision.
He bounced up. But it was facing the wrong way the next play.
That shouldn't be an out.
That
Back
baseball
to
found the
game
right
3.
head out there.
Warriors were without Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, and that meant Steph Curry was forced to essentially be the team's entire offense. Steph did about all you could have asked, 47 points in the loss, the second most in a losing effort in finals history, behind LeBron's 51 in Game 1 last year. See, how impressive was Steph last night?
It was amazing. It was because getting ready for the game, Nick and I tried to give the fans a view of what was going to happen without Klay, not knowing 100% he wasn't going to play, but if he's not on the court, what will the Warriors look like? Well, this is what any team that had Steph Curry. So for me, last night was for all the doubters and all the haters that say, oh, it's the system. Oh, it's Klay. Oh, it's Draymond. Oh, it's KD. We knew it wasn't KD because what we saw from Steph with the 2 MVP seasons and the run that he was on before KD got there. But he's sensational. People say that he's the best shooter ever. Well, let me tell you, Jenna, he's the best shooter off the dribble. He's the best shooter off the standstill. He's the best shooter off a baseline pick. You want to run a pick and roll? He's the best shooter for that. You want to run a pin down, put him on the box, send someone down the screen for him? He's the best shooter in all those situations. He is an amazing basketball player. And one thing I know that Nick, he gets criticized an awful lot about, but we didn't get to see a lot of this because they got so many guys on one team. When KD goes out, we see Draymond. He's got to be more offensive. The basketball is forced out of him. Now, I'd much rather see everyone healthy. But to see Steph Curry and to see, because Klay's not there, because KD's not there, oh, let's see Steph Curry, what he could do. And that's what he could do.
Hero ball is fun. And that is something we have missed in this league over the last decade or so, is that because we are in the era of the super team, this isn't necessarily winning. It's tough winning basketball. It's tough to win championships this way. It's tough to win 4 consecutive series where one guy has to do what Steph did last night. Hell, Steph had, I believe, the finest playoff game of his career, and they were never within 2 possessions the entire second half. But man, that was fun to watch. He was going into the game, I said, for the Warriors to have any chance, Steph and Draymond got to combine for 60, 15, and 10. Well, they combined for 64, 15, and 11, and they still couldn't win because Steph went 47, 8, and 7. He was so good. And I couldn't help, and this is something I get criticized for as well, don't care. I can't be the only person that was watching this and felt, man, Steph Curry had to, after the game, think to himself for a moment, oh, so that's what LeBron James's life has been like against us. Doesn't matter. Lead every team in points, rebounds, assists. Be the best player on the court by a country mile. Can't do it. I looked it up this morning. 6 times against the Warriors in the finals, LeBron has combined for at least 55 points, rebounds, assists, and gone home with the loss.
Wow.
It happened in Game 1 of the 2015 finals and Game 5 and Game 6. The game that KD hit that big shot over LeBron that we were sitting at happened then. Then it happened in the closeout game of that series in Game 5 and obviously the first game of last year's finals. This is what happens to guys that are standalone great players on undermanned teams. You see if you can pull this out of them. And for Steph, obviously, they wanted to win last night. They maybe needed to win last night, depending on the long-term health of Klay and KD. But once you get some perspective, this was, to me, a vindicating moment for a player that probably shouldn't need vindication because it answered those questions. How much of Steph is the system? How much of the system is Steph? When I said a month ago, listen, I think Steph's the most important and best guy on the Warriors, but if you're an anonymous team, the Knicks, obviously you'd rather have Kevin Durant because he can go into any system.
Right.
Steph last night showed you, man, I'm pretty damn good in any system as well, and he did it in 44 minutes and up to and including the last minute. Who's the guy diving on the court for a loose ball to try to force a jump ball? Steph Curry. He was inspiring last night with how good he was.
Is it the kind of game where if the Warriors go on to win, you could say, and he gets the MVP, well, that was the reason why, because of what he was able to do?
Well, to me, and he's been special in a few games in the finals in this run, but last night to me, man, it was about heart. It was about against all odds. Like, he didn't have to put that type of effort into the game. He could have been like, you know something? Hey, give me my normal amount of rest, all right? I'm going to take good shots so I don't look bad, because when you go out like he did, there's also the opportunity that you could be like after the game, well, Steph Curry blew it.
Right.
Well, Steph Curry blew the game.
You can have a 9 for 29.
I mean, to me, it was about, I already have a great deal of respect. It just ensured me that my respect is in the right place. He plays the game the right way. Man, and last night, I loved watching his warm-up. He did not change his warm-up from any other game. I mean, he was on a mission. He was on a mission to send a message that I can win this game by myself, and man, did he try. And like you said, Nick, it was exciting to watch.
Yesterday was the 26 years ago to the day yesterday, Charles Barkley broke through to lead the Phoenix Suns to the NBA Finals in an epic Game 7 performance. 44 points, 24 rebounds. It reminded you of that. It reminded me of a game that I referenced on the show yesterday, the final game Jordan ever played with the Bulls, where he scored 45 points, it took 35 shots, doesn't matter. It was, the team scored 87. Scotty was out of gas. Rodman was out of gas. The team was on its last legs. You know why? It's third straight finals, going for a third straight championship. And Jordan willed them to that win. Obviously, Steph didn't will him to the win like Chuck and MJ did, but it was a singular performance that we haven't had to pull that out of Steph because Steph had never played in a playoff game without Klay Thompson, had never been in this circumstance. Last few years, he's been playing alongside Klay and Kevin Durant. To me, it was the best of Steph Curry.
And he was doing it at every level. Dribbled the ball up the court to get himself free, played on the baseline, got shots in the lane, got to the free throw line, was still very good. Absolutely. Every level of his game that you can see. Didn't turn the ball over, taking a whole bunch of chances. But, man, Steph Curry was special in the game, and that wasn't enough with them being short.
And it's one of the reasons why in team sports, it's always hard for me to be results-oriented on did your team win, did your team lose? How far did you get? Because we see the context of it. We see the context of we have seen Steph come away with championships throughout an NBA Finals. He doesn't have a game anything close to this. And it wasn't because he was better. It's because it is a team sport, because the guys around you are important. Steph was the best guy on the court last night. The reason he lost is the next 5 best guys all played for the other team. That's a situation he's never been in his career, but he rose to the occasion.
Time for stories to start your morning. Steph Curry was forced to essentially be Golden State's entire offense last night. And he did about all you could have asked. 47 points in the loss, the second most in a losing effort in finals history, behind LeBron's 51 in Game 1 last year. See, how impressive was Steph last night?
Super impressive. Not only just with the points and everything. To me, it's about the effort. Also, I'm going to put myself out there. Great players put themselves out there that they can be embarrassed. He came out firing from all over the court. And we knew going into this game without Klay, without KD, he's going to have to take some bad shots. But to me, in this NBA, Steph Curry, as long as he's past half court, I trust him. But, man, the guts he showed last night I thought were special.
And I'm going to use one of my favorite words He was indefatigable, man. He couldn't get tired. Yeah, I knew you'd say that. That's why I said it's one of my favorite. Think about how hard his job was last night.
Yeah, I wanted to correct you earlier. You said he played 44 minutes. He actually played 43
minutes and 15 seconds. Okay, correct. You're right. We're going to round up. He was so good.
Yes.
I think you can have the finest game of your career in a loss. And I think that's what that was for Steph Curry last night. I'm sure he wouldn't call it his best game because they didn't win, but he was unbelievable.
And it goes to prove you might be on the losing team, but that don't make you a loser.
No.
Steph Curry was special.
All right, moving on to Boogie Cousins. Did not have a special night last night. He had a strong game 2, a bad game 3. 4 points, 3 rebounds, and 19 minutes of work. And he had to leave the game early, but is expected to be fine. Nick, what'd you make of Boogie's struggles?
I think that we had probably improper expectations based on what he did in game 2. The team thought he could only play 20 minutes in game 2. He was pressed into service because Kevon Looney got hurt, and it changed the math, and he was effective. But see, this was a guy who couldn't jump very high 2 injuries ago. Now, post-Achilles, still dealing with something of a quad injury. He's not going to be fully healthy from that until the offseason. He doesn't look like he can get 6 inches off the ground, and he was a liability last night for them.
When we saw him in game 1, it was fool's gold.
Game 2.
We thought that, oh, man, like, you know what? We'll put another 15 minutes on it, and he'll just get better. No, you can't miss 45 days on the job, NBA, your cardio, all the things that go back in it. Now, he did a marvelous job as far as getting back. He thought about quitting after he tore his quad. But this is the price of being an NBA player. They had a better scouting report on him. They realized he couldn't finish at the rim. Don't foul him and bail him out. And he's a liability on defense. Let's put him in the pick and roll.
And we spent so much time talking about the impact of Klay's injury. You know what injury showed up last night as well? Kevon Looney's. They could have absolutely used him defensively in place of some of those Boogie minutes.
All right, finally, the Raptors dominated a depleted Warriors team. Kawhi Leonard leading the way with 30 points. We said he would need his role players, and last night they delivered. Big night for Toronto's starting 5, each scoring at least 17 points. Nick, how impressive was their balanced effort in this win?
I can't remember a game in the finals where everyone that took a shot at least 50%, where nobody had an off night. A game in the finals where every starter, we hear about games all starters get to double digits. It's 10 points, 11 points. Everyone gets to 17 points.
And I'd be shocked if you saw it where it was on the road.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that element of it, where you don't have the home crowd juicing you up throughout. And by the way, they needed it. It would have been one thing if this was 125-89, where it was that the Warriors rolled over and played dead, and it wasn't a concern at any point that the Raptors could lose. The Raptors were in jeopardy multiple times, and then Danny Green hit a 3, and Kyle Lowry hit a 3.
Yep.
Hell, the end of the first quarter, Steph races down, gets a 3 with about 14 seconds left, and to cut it to 4.
Yes.
And guess what? They come back down. Danny Green hits a corner 3. It was an all-around effort. And then on the bench, you had Serge Ibaka, who offensively just 2 of 4, and he comes in with the best defense I've seen him play since he was wearing Oklahoma City Thunder jersey. He was a monster in the second half defensively. It was truly, they played 7 guys significant minutes. All 7 guys made their impact felt on this game.
You said yesterday, you talked about Kyle Lowry and how if they're going to win, Kyle Lowry is going to need to step up. And he did 23 points, 5 3-pointers in this one. How effective was he, and how much did Kawhi need him?
Kyle Lowry's game was so important. Not only did he help stabilize the backcourt, but some of that firepower that Steph from the backcourt, because Van Fleet came in, him and Danny Green, they had a great 3-guard rotation. But Kyle Lowry's ability to be able to score without a design play and his ability to be able to shoot from deep, it opened up the defense. It made him generate a lot of attention to that side of the court. So even with that attention, he could swing the ball and get someone else's shot. The Warriors knew and they respected his game. So it opened up the court. It gave Kawhi a chance that he could rest a little bit on the offensive end, so when he wanted to have a burst that he didn't run out of gas. I thought Kyle Lowry was special. Game number 1, I thought he was just okay. because the other people, Siakam played so well,
right,
and his point total was down, but the way he ran the game, I think, was efficient. Game number 2, I expect better from him. He's back to where he was playing in the Milwaukee series. They don't have a chance unless he is. We have to have an argument. Is he the second or third best player? But he's got to play like he's the second best player, and when he does, they're a tough team.
And he almost got himself in trouble. I text you when it happened because the fouling 30 feet, 60 feet, 90 feet from the basket, which is how he fouled out of game 2, which was a really poor game by him. There was a sequence in the second quarter where he had back-to-back fouls.
Yeah, late in the second quarter.
Far away from the basket. It was giving the Warriors free throws, and it's like, what are you doing? He didn't pick up another foul the rest of the game. He picked up his third foul with about 2 minutes left in the second quarter, finished the game with only 3 fouls, but it really was everybody. And Danny Green, who shot 11% from 3 in the conference finals, has already made more threes through 3 games of the NBA finals than he did through 6 games of the conference finals. If he can hit those open corner threes, which he's going to get, he is such an asset because he's such a good long defensive player.
Another number to watch is watch 100. You said their starters scored 106 of the 123. This year, when their starters scored 100 points, they're 7-0. So let's just watch as we go on. If their starters can get to 100, good chance the Raptors are going to win.
And one thing, because we're talking about the whole cast, which shouldn't be lost in the shuffle, is Kawhi Leonard, who's clearly not 100%.
No.
He found a way to moderate himself, had a big impact early, had a big impact late. You look, it seemed like he had a quiet game. You look, oh, he had 37 and 6, first game of the series, above 50% from the field. He had, going into the game, had only made 13 field goals. He made 9 in last night's game. He once again got to the free throw line double-digit times, so now he's been to the free throw line 39 times. He's 36 of 39 from the line through 3 games, which is obviously spectacular. And he was a little more impactful defensively in this game than we'd seen him.
But
he was the best player for the Raptors.
you
last
do
night.
see that he is hampered by his legs a little bit, and he was struggling a little bit and hobbled. But last night he got help from his teammates. Let's move on to talk about Klay Thompson. He warmed up before Game 3 last night, but the training staff ultimately felt that he should sit. And the Warriors certainly missed him, falling to the Raptors in his absence 123-109. As for KD's potential return, he said after the game he'll, quote, know more in the morning. Steve Kerr talked about the decision to sit Klay Thompson and what that means moving forward.
Never would have forgiven myself if I played him tonight and he had gotten hurt. So you live with the decision. You make a wise decision, the wisest one you can, then you live with it and you move forward. So the good thing is Klay has done well the last 2 days. Now he's got another couple of days to heal. Hopefully he'll be out there Friday.
You got to try to have next man up mentality, like we always say, and just go out and fight. We did that tonight. We can play better, obviously, better on the defensive end. But I like the competitiveness that we had. Understanding, like we're missing 50 points pretty much between KD and Klay, so we'll adjust and it's a long series. It's gonna be fun for us.
Warriors are hoping it goes even longer, but they're having a hard time with all these injuries. Will injuries be the biggest factor in the NBA Finals moving forward?
Absolutely. It will be the story. You won't be able to tell this story without talking about the injuries. I mean, we've never seen anything like it. KD lost a couple series ago, but Kevon Looney, a guy that a rotational player, very, very important to them, out with a cracked shoulder. I mean, Klay, the ultimate warrior, misses his first playoff game. Yes, I mean we haven't seen this type of star power all at once off the court. We talked about a number of years ago. Oh, Kyrie Irving, he wasn't available. Oh, Kevin Love, oh, he wasn't available. But not to the magnitude of these injuries. But ultimately, though, it's still going to be a champion awarded. Don't nobody care about the Warriors. All these other teams we've seen through the years, they had injuries. I talked about the Cavs, the Rockets, and other teams that they face. So this long NBA season, it does mean something. But just imagine this, because you talked about this just off the record when you're just blowing off steam. Imagine if the Warriors had their act a little better during the regular season. They win one more game. Maybe they got home court advantage compared to, the regular season doesn't mean that
They played
much.
Toronto twice. One game, Kevin Durant scored 51 points, and they lost. One game, Kawhi Leonard didn't play. and they lost. If they had won either one of those games, either one of those games, then they have home court advantage in this series. Then it's 58 wins for them, 57 wins for Toronto.
But would that change the table and the landscape of where things are right now?
It just lets you know the importance of the regular season. Those 82 games, they've worked it out that, yes, but the wear and tear, it's real. It hit the other 29 teams the last 5 years. Now it's hit the Warriors.
And if they had home court, even if all the injuries still happen. Now, obviously, Kevon Looney and Klay's injuries happened in this series, so everything would be different. But let's just pretend the injuries are the exact same and the score of the series the exact same. If they had home court, they'd be in this position. Okay, we just got to get to a Game 7, which is at home.
Yes.
Now they're in a position where there's two ways for the Warriors to win this series. Win 3 in a row, starting right now, or win 3 out of 4, including Game 7 NBA Finals on the road. Now, I understand we saw the Cavs and LeBron do that to them in Oracle. It is incredibly rare. There is no better, historically, home court advantage in sports. Better than conference championship games in the NFL, better than in playoff baseball. Game 7s of conference finals or NBA Finals for the home team. And so, but to answer your question directly, Jenna, injuries are the story of this series. Now, you could argue they're the story of many NBA Finals, and we just, through the lens of history, forget about them. But last night, you can make the argument, if any of their 4 injured players was 100%, they win that game. If KD's out there, if Klay's out there, hell, if Kevon Looney's out there,
I can argue.
He can make an impact. And the 4th guy is Boogie. Boogie was out there, but he's not Boogie Cousins. Like, would we have gone into last night's game thinking the Warriors were going to
Those minutes were forced on him.
Of course they were forced on him because he's coming back from an injury. If the Warriors had a fully healthy Boogie Cousins, we're talking about this totally differently. That is, again, I want to make this clear. There's a difference between an excuse and an explanation.
Yes.
This is not an excuse. This is life in the NBA, and the Warriors don't want to historically go back and start playing the injury game. Because in 2015, the Cavs will have an objection. In 2017, the Spurs and Kawhi have an objection. And last year, the Rockets and Chris Paul have an objection.
Of course.
It just feels like the Warriors, after dancing through the raindrops injury-wise for 4 years, now have a thunderstorm on their head with all these guys injured at the same time.
It's hard to, and I'm sure no one does, it's hard to feel sorry for this team because they have so many superstars. And, they had to do it with just one superstar and maybe Draymond Green. A lot of teams, LeBron had to do it, go through the finals, go through the entire playoffs with just one superstar on their team.
Yes, no one has seen the run that they have been on as far as lack of their key guys being hurt. No one wants to see their key guys being hurt. But we still have to cover the series. And I do believe that when you look back on it, the regular season, it becomes very, very important what type of shape you get into the playoffs in. And unfortunately, they lost Boogie Cousins. He fights himself to be able to come back. Unfortunately, they lose KD. With Klay being out there, I mean, this is the story of the series because Kawhi's not healthy. Kyle Lowry's not the story. Like, what else would we talk about? The injuries are the number one headline.
Jenna, back when you were covering the New York Knicks in '99, the lockout year, they make the NBA Finals. They get washed in those NBA Finals. You know one of the reasons? Patrick Ewing got hurt during that playoff run. He was out and was not himself. They had to go to Marcus Camby, who played well. Like, this is how it works in the NBA playoffs. If the Warriors, however, are able to win the championship, I'll have to go deep into the archives, but best as I can tell, they will have suffered more injuries during the playoffs than any NBA champion in modern NBA history of key guys. You lose your best or second best guy, Kevin Durant, for a month at least. You lose Klay Thompson for at least one game. You lose Boogie Cousins for 6 weeks. You lose your starting center and replacement of Boogie Cousins during the NBA Finals. Teams historically have not been able to overcome that. We'll see if the Warriors can break that trend.
But if they lose, there's no asterisk you're putting by them at all because we may remember it now, but we're years from now.
The Raptors get this championship free and clear if they win by any means necessary.
Back here, first things first, look who's here. Sports Illustrated senior writer Cris Mannix.
Jenna, did he just you?
Yeah, but don't worry, I unshushed him by talking.
Not Mannix, I did.
No, Nick.
No.
Nick tries to shush me every day.
I wouldn't dare.
No, don't shush me. I'll unshush you.
Yes.
Okay, well, I won't shush you again the rest of the show. And 3 times while we're coming back from commercial break, this is what the audience will hear.
Jenna.
And then
I
And then
tell
we'll be on the
lengthy
air.
stories in the
Yeah.
commercial
I
break.
mean, Chris is in the hallway, though, like right before the show
Thank you,
comes
but
on,
Nick would
so-
never mention that.
Hey,
But of course, a
I
long
like your
story.
haircut. My
Anyway,
partner's so jealous of your hair
That is
and
not
the
true.
cut.
Your hair does look
you guys
good.
actually have similar haircuts now. It is
we-
great to
no, we
have you,
don't.
Mannix.
No, we don't.
Let's talk some finals. The Raptors took a 2-1 series lead after beating a depleted Warriors team last night. Klay Thompson, as predicted, did not play. He was missed on both sides of the ball. Kawhi Leonard led the way for the Raptors with 30 points, and all of Toronto's starters scored at least 17. Big momentum shift for Toronto now. Here's Kyle Lowry after the game.
You lose an all-NBA type basketball player in Klay and an all-star. It definitely, it changes their team. But, I mean, Steph had an unbelievable game. 47 points is pretty impressive. But, we just went out there and did our job. And, I think we held them under 40% shooting. We played well. We finished the game, and we found a way to win a basketball game.
Mannix, was Game 3 more about what the Raptors did well, or was it just Steph having no help, essentially?
I don't want to take anything away from what Toronto did in the fourth quarter of that game, because there were moments where it looked like Golden State had opportunities to seize control and win that game. And every time Golden State inched closer, I think it was like 7-8 points here or there.
They never got closer than 7.
Never, because the Raptors had an answer. And it wasn't just Kawhi taking over. It was Serge Ibaka coming up with either a block on one end or a mid-range jumper on the other. It was Fred VanVleet taking pretty high degree of difficulty shots. I mean, we can talk about Klay being missing on defense, but these were not open shots that the Raptors were making. Kawhi made them. I thought Kyle Lowry had a terrific game when there's always so much pressure on him to be great on both ends of the floor. So it's certainly, the injuries were a factor, but Toronto's ability to answer every surge that Golden State had, I think, was the overriding one.
And in that fourth quarter, the stretch you're talking about, was the only time all game they got their arms around Steph. Steph hit his final shot. Final made basket was with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So, they were able to, whenever the Warriors were getting close, make sure whoever takes the shot to get it closer is not going to be Steph Curry, or if it is him, he's not going to have a good look. But there was a different moment that I thought the Warriors, earlier than that, it was kind of, I think, missed. I don't want to say missed in the broadcast, but I thought it was an enormous sequence in the game. Beginning third quarter, when we know the Warriors have historically gone on these runs, Boogie gets a steal and is going up the court, and he has a layup attempt, and he misses the layup. And then going back the other, you'll see it right here. Here, Boogie got the steal, passed it, he then misses. Next time on this play down the court, so it could have been 5, now it's 7, now it's 10.
Those are daggers.
Those
right there.
are daggers.
Yeah.
When you could have cut it to 5, the closest you would have been since early second quarter. That's the middle of the third. The crowd was in full throat, and now it's like, wait, we have a 5-point. Now it's a 10-point game. Those are emotionally crushing plays, and Toronto had a bunch of those throughout the game when the Warriors got close, and they just kept them just past arm's length.
Yeah, you got to give the Raptors coaching staff and Nick Nurse credit too, because at halftime everybody's ready for the third quarter Warriors. Some people say that's the 31st team in the NBA. Yeah. They're that good. So in this, we know that, man, Toronto, they've been beating the Warriors first, second quarter, and the fourth quarter. They've been getting walloped in the third quarter. He decides to start VanVleet in the third quarter. Now listen, Danny Green in the first quarter played sensational. He wasn't bad in the second quarter, but to take out a veteran in the third quarter and say, I'm going to start him in game 3 on the road, and that veteran be able to handle it, and that locker room be able to handle it. It's not a panic move, but it is our strategy. We believe in our coach, and it transferred. VanVleet played 12 minutes, and Danny Green only played half the time he played, but he chipped in 9 big points there. So for me, you got to give credit all the way around. And that coaching staff, I thought that was a tremendous move.
And to that point, one of the reasons that the Raptors made the coaching change and then went with Nick Nurse is because Nick Nurse is not afraid to do stuff like that and thinks more outside the box. Dwayne Casey's an excellent coach, won Coach of the Year last year, but Dwayne Casey oftentimes was wed to lineups. He would play 2 bigs no matter what, didn't make a lot of changes on the fly.
high. Nick Nurse, as we've seen with that box and one, as we saw with the change in the lineup, he's not afraid to be a little unorthodox.
Now, Mannix, does that come from his coaching history? Very unorthodox, playing in the D League. When you're playing, you don't know what your lineup's going to be. He said he's gone through what the Warriors are going through, not knowing who to play. That is the life when you're in the G League and everything. Do you think that's led to him being an excellent X and O guy for the Raptors?
I think that's a big part of it, having to think outside the box, having to be a little bit unorthodox, and having to not be sure what your rotation is. He doesn't have a lot of NBA head coaching experience, but Nick Nurse has a lot of coaching experience, period.
So, Nick, you said something really interesting earlier. The Raptors couldn't win this series last night, but they certainly could have lost it. Had Klay Thompson played and given you anything, really, and then the Raptors lost, that would have been a devastating blow.
Well, or particularly had it been like last night where Klay doesn't play.
Or doesn't
and they
play,
lose. That
especially.
would have been a heart punch.
Well, where do you think the Warriors miss Klay more, on offense or on defense?
Oh, I think offense. Defense, look, it's like I said, I think as a team, the Warriors did not play well defensively, but some of those shots the Raptors made in the fourth quarter, I don't think they were necessarily due to horrible defense. At least not defense I think Klay Thompson would have helped with. Offensively, you had Steph running around, 31 shots, just trying to manufacture comebacks almost on his own. Draymond Green wasn't anywhere near as effective as he could have been. The supporting cast in general wasn't as effective. And you heard the players after the game talk about it. When Klay is out there on the floor, there's a body on him at all times. And when you don't have to put a body on Quinn Cook or Sean Livingston or Andre Iguodala, it changes how you look offensively.
And they had several guys that they allowed to shoot. Draymond to start the game. All right, Klay's not on the court. It's all right. They're still going to be good. They give Draymond a three-pointer. He shoots an air ball. Boogie Cousins, they dare him to shoot one. He shoots an air ball. So not only his presence on the court, but the mentality and do I want to shoot this as the game goes on? And you could start to see the Warriors, as the game went on, they start getting the ball, giving the ball back to Steph because they didn't have the type of confidence. And in those spots, you need someone like Klay could have been 0 for 20. But in the fourth quarter, he would have been swearing up and down. The next one's going to go in. And they didn't have that type of confidence that Klay always has.
The non-Steph Warriors, 6 of 22 from 3. And the other place not having Klay out there hurt enormously on the offensive end is what's Draymond's best skill as an offensive player? His playmaking, his passing. Got to have somebody to pass to. And so, Draymond would get the ball, and some of his impact was muted because, okay, Steph's not there. Wait, Klay's not even playing. Am I going to give it to Bogut, who got minutes and looked as slow as I think a lot of people expected him to be? With that said, I thought Klay's impact not being out there defensively was enormous because what they had done in Game 2, which I think was really sharp by the Warriors, was they had Klay guarding Kawhi, and so Draymond could play more of a free safety.
Which was different than Game number 1.
Exactly right. So I was stumbling there, but thank you. So Draymond could play more of the free safety role. With Klay not out there, Draymond's got to guard Kawhi, so he can't get to the paint. He can't get to the loose balls as much. So you saw Klay's absence have a trickle-down effect on Draymond in both ways, on both ends of the court, and they needed Draymond to be the second-best player last night. He wasn't able to do it.
And with Demarcus Cousins, this is more likely what you're going to get than the one we saw in Game 2. You've got two guys in Ibaka and Gasol who are sharpened edges at this point. They are ready for an NBA Finals. You simply can't throw a player into this atmosphere and expect him to be the guy he was in Game 2 consistently.
Tiger Woods returns to Pebble Beach, the site of his most dominant major win. The U.S. Open begins next Thursday on Fox FS1 and the Fox Sports app.
Tiger and Koepka. It's going to come down to those two. That's my prediction.
Back here with Chris
Sunday
Mannix.
duel.
Oh, time now for Say What? Rush
guy.
through it. Celtics general manager, one of my favorite general managers in the league. Nice guy, all-around great guy. Danny Ainge had a health scare recently and has been out of the public eye. Yesterday, he spoke with reporters. Say what?
A lot of people are, concerned about the Celtics, but also concerned about you and your health. And have you had to change or modify anything you normally do since the heart attack?
Yeah, I'm eating more plants, and not the kind of plants in Walton's garden.
Oh, that's a Bill Walton shot?
Yeah.
Little one.
Yeah.
That's a Bill Walton likes to get high comment.
Yes.
Good for Danny Ainge.
Hey, Danny had to change. Danny 10 years ago had the heart attack. He had to change then. Gonna have to change again now.
That's your guy, Jenna Wolfe.
That's my guy.
See, this is the thing.
Not gonna slow down though.
Look,
Here we
If
go.
he would have responded to Jenna Wolfe long time ago,
No
we'd have had
shot
him on
he'd
some
have a heart
type of
attack.
Yeah. He would have
No
been eating
shot.
plenty of greens. He'd be in
on a
better
health
shape and
regimen.
everything.
Yeah.
Mannix, how many grandkids Danny Ainge got?
Oh, I have no
We're
idea.
in the double digits.
I don't
right?
think we're in double-digit grandkids yet. No, we're
I thought it was like 18. Or
I think
something
it
like
is.
that.
18
Listen.
grandkids.
Yeah.
My guy then, my guy now.
Jenna wasn't down for that now.
No, not.
I'll leave that one alone. All right.
Feel better, Danny. Keep eating those plants. Klay Thompson warmed up.
Or
before
go to
Game
Bill
3
Walton. He got
last
something
night.
for you. Get you
Make
right.
you feel better either way.
But the training
Hell of a lot better
staff
than Kale.
on the Warriors felt that Klay Thompson should sit it out, and so he did, and the Warriors missed him, falling to the Raptors in his absence. 123-109 was your final. As for KD's potential return, he said he'll, quote, know more in the morning, so we shall see later today. Meanwhile, Steve Kerr said he expects Klay to be out there Friday night. Chris, will injuries be the biggest factor in the NBA Finals moving forward?
I think they will be, because it's a lot to ask Durant and Klay Thompson to come back in a Game 4 and be really effective. Now, for Durant, he's still not practicing.
He's not going to play in
like,
Game 4.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, you've got to go full, if history is any indicator, you've got to go full 5-on-5, ramp it up to a high level, and be in a simulated NBA game before you step out there on the floor. And this type of injury, which Durant's dealt with in the past, I just don't see him rushing back because of it. Now, Klay Thompson, I could see him playing in Game 4, but as soon as he steps out on the floor, Nick Nurse is going to go at him and say, you have to prove that defensively you can stay out there in the court. Now, they may try to hide him on a Danny Green who stands in the corner more often, but if it is Danny Green's going to run off more screens than he ever has in the history of his career just to get Klay Thompson moving and test out that hamstring. So, yes, I think, with those two players being out, that's the biggest storyline.
I'm very confident in these two things. Klay is going to play in Game 4.
At least try.
I mean, the fact that he was fighting to play up to 40 minutes before Game 3 leads me to believe there's no chance they're keeping him out of Game 4. And just as confident as I am in that, I am in this. KD is not going to play. They're not even having a real practice today. They said they're going to try to get KD in some 3-on-3 today. You can't play after a month off with some 3-on-3 the day before a game. Now, they have the full weekend before Game 5, so if he gets some 3-on-3 today, he could then get a real practice in over the weekend and play in Game 5 on Monday. But KD is not going to play tomorrow.
But one thing that we should listen to in the report, KD said, I'll know a lot more tomorrow. So that's not only the 3-on-3 that he's going to try to, but he's also going to see how am I going to recover from the work that he did yesterday. Because that's one of the number one tests. Before I can even get you in 3-on-3 simulated any type of practices, I need to put you in a strenuous situation, give you 12 hours, see how the body responds. And then they're going to put him on the court. And I don't believe they're going to ever get to 5-on-5. I believe they're going to compromise in this because Steve Kerr has been saying, he must practice, he must do it. And then he was like, I believe that 3-on-3 will be enough. And this is the thing that I'm concerned about. I believe Klay will play in game number 4 because even he tears his hamstring off the bone, he'll be healthy. All right? And they're going to give him a contract.
Oh, you mean he'll be healthy for next season?
Yeah.
Even if he suffers the
And
worst
they're going to
injury.
give him
I
a
got it.
contract.
Right.
KD, what could go wrong? He could re-aggravate that calf or he could injure. Most guys that have torn their Achilles, they said they either have a problem with their lower foot and their heel, which is the attachment point where that Achilles starts, and or their calf. That's what typically happens. Your Achilles typically is not going to just blow out. You either got something wrong with your calf or in the foot area. And if I was Kevin Durant, I would be worried about that. We are less than a month from free agency. They're in 2 different spots, so I believe that they will treat it that way. I don't believe Kevin Durant's going to play before Game 5.
But you think that, look, I think there's just as big a concern with Klay Thompson entering free agency moving forward. I mean, I'm not sure that there's going to be a full max level offer for Klay. I would hope that the Warriors would do that, but if they don't come with a full max level offer, he's going to look around at other teams and see what's out there. I mean,
it wouldn't affect the other teams looking at him because it is a classic hamstring. That's not something you would have to worry about. Now, Now, as far as the money, they're going to have to worry about that regardless of an injury. Klay has the type of – they had to hold him out.
Right.
He was in uniform last night, so he's going to play. So he's going to push it. I don't see KD pushing himself too because he's got a lot more at stake than Klay does.
That's true. I'm extremely skeptical, though, for the reasons I just said, of Klay being a huge factor in game 4.
Well, that's just it. Even if he does come back, how many minutes? How much can he do on defense? How is that going to affect what happens if you have no KD?
Well, listen, they're going to have to. They are not going to have the luxury that Klay presents defensively, which is the perfect complement for Steph and a guy who gave Kawhi trouble in game 2. Yeah. It's going to, and you might have to compromise your entire defensive scheme. You might have to go to more of an NBA style, almost zone defense or just switch everything. Ask Klay, because you're not going to ask him to fight through screens. Mm-hmm. You can say guard Danny Green, but until he moves, like you said, because he is not going to be able to, not if they want him to play 35 minutes, not if they want him to have a real impact on the game, but injuries have already been the biggest factor in these finals. Kawhi is not fully healthy. We have seen how that has impacted his play. Boogie is not himself. We saw that impact his play in game 1 and game 3, and if we're being honest, the only reason 11, 10, and 6 from Boogie is a great game is because it was coming off an injury. We didn't talk at all about Kevon Looney. You think they could have used him last night? Little rim protection. Yeah. Kevon Looney maybe catching some alley-oops. And that's not to mention Kevin Durant, who was just averaging 39 points a game in his 8 games before his injury, hadn't played in these
And we need to build see game 4. In this series, no one's playing more minutes than Steph Curry. He's averaging 41 minutes. Mm-hmm. Does that affect him in game number 4 with the amount of energy he put out there last night? I saw LeBron drop 51. Man, he came back in game number 2. He wasn't the same. I mean, it took a lot out of him, not only how they lost the game, but the amount of energy you have to exert, and you don't get paid off with the win. Let's see how Steph responds to that.
And on that note, LeBron at least had some history of playing these super high minutes. I looked this up last night. I couldn't believe it. Since from the end of the 2015 finals, so it was 2016 to now, over these last 4 years, Steph has only played more than 41 minutes in overtime playoff games and playoff games against the Rockets. No NBA Finals games, 41-plus minutes. No games in any other series, 41-plus minutes. Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals, Steph Curry, 39 minutes, because he has to work so much offensively, running off those screens. Kerr tries not to put him in those positions. So he plays 43 minutes last night. It's the only time in the series where you only have 1 day between games. That's another, you know why he had to play those 43 minutes? Injuries. And so, that is the butterfly effect of these injuries is, to me, the story looming over these NBA finals.
And I think one thing you have to be fearful of going into the next game is that Curry might be able to give you that 40 points, but it'll be at a much more inefficient rate. I mean, he had 31 shots. He shot close to 50% from the floor. I think he can still give you a high number of points, but it might be on 41% or 42% shooting, which changes everything in the series.
Back to last night's game. Toronto dominated a depleted Warriors team. It was 123-109. They now lead the series 2-1. The Raptors were massive underdogs when the series started. But now the teams have even odds to take home the Larry O'Brien Trophy. So, Nick, who has the edge in the series at this point?
Just real quick, I am shocked.
You were surprised this morning when you found out.
I couldn't believe it. That the series odds across all the Vegas casinos or your favorite online sports book say it's a coin flip. It's a pick 'em at this point. I'm stunned by that, because when the Warriors were installed as favorites before the series, we knew Kevin Durant was going to be injured. We knew that the Raptors had home court advantage, and we knew the Raptors were favored in game 1 and game 2, Warriors favored in game 3, even though it didn't go like that. When the Warriors were minus 280, big favorites for the series, it was totally in play to be 2-1 Toronto after this point.
You know what we didn't know?
What's that?
We didn't know Kevin Durant was going to travel to game number 1, which made it more likely that he was going to come back sooner. And we didn't know they were going to have Boogie Cousins. So when you look at, these guys look like they might be coming back in the next game or 2. Now you see Boogie play, and now we've been through 3 games, and KD is still not practicing yet.
And no Klay.
Vegas typically knows something.
I just find it stunning that the odds have changed this much when it's 2-1 with the home team having 2 wins, the road team having 1 win, even though they've each won on the opposition's court. I feel the Warriors still have the edge in the series. I feel the Warriors, because Klay is coming back, or I believe he is coming back in Game 4, and Durant likely comes back in Game 5, I think the Warriors do have the edge in the series. But if it is the slightest of edges, to me, it is now a 55-45 series, and I'm going to mention it again, that Kevon Looney injury looms larger and larger if Game 2 was the aberration rather than Game 3.
Nick, I'm going to take you to Game 1. I got a crystal ball. I can do this. Kevin Durant's not going to play. We're before Game 1. He's not going to play in the whole series. Looney's going to be available, and Klay's going to be healthy the whole series. Who do you pick in the series?
The Warriors.
Okay. Jenna and I, the reason why we predicted the Raptors were going to win, we had a feeling that KD was not going to play. Now I'm already to Game 4. All right? Looney's not going to play anymore, and Boogie Cousins is not going to be an all-star level player in this series. So for me, I can understand what Vegas is saying. The team that has the home court advantage and is the healthier team, and it's not a wild card who's going to play for them in the next potential 3 or 4 games. With Golden State, it's not getting better for KD. The longer he stays off the practice court, the probability for the Raptors goes up. That's why the odds now are at even, and the Raptors have guaranteed this for the most part. They guaranteed almost 2 games at home.
Oh, listen, they're in a position where the Raptors have to look at it as not their worst case scenario, but their near worst case scenario is a Game 7 at home to win the title. And I understand the Warriors would have to win Games 4, 5, and 6 in order to avoid that scenario. So I get that part of it. And the Raptors, with OG now back, I know he still hasn't played, but he's back dressing. They're the healthiest they've been these playoffs. Kawhi, whatever he's dealing with, he was able to deal with it last night. 38 minutes, 30 points, finally above 50% from the field. And obviously going into the series, when I picked Warriors in 6, I didn't think KD, that was even without KD playing, but I didn't think Klay was going to get hurt. Nobody could have thought Klay was going to miss a game. The other thing that this Vegas line tells me is they believe that Klay Thompson, when he comes back, is not fully Klay Thompson. That they are baking into it that he's not going to be 38 minutes, knockdown shooting to go along with great defense. That he's going to be a minimized version of himself.
Yeah, that hamstring, it's very, very tricky. And the way Klay plays, the stress going to be put on that hamstring. I tell you, man, if I'm Nick Nurse, I'm bringing in someone going against Klay every 3 minutes, just a fresh body, so I can run him ragged, because the hamstring, if it's confined, like if you're a football player, if you're interior, you can get away with it. You can wrap it up because you're never going to have to explode and or burst or sprint. Klay is sprinting all the time on the offensive end and on the defensive end. So even though I do believe he's going to try to play in game number 4, I believe his overall health will be compromised for the rest of the series. Not for 1 game, 2 game. That hamstring, you know when it's going to get better? In July.
And one last point, even though, again, I'm still going to stick with the Warriors in this series, and I think they should be the slight favorites. The devil's advocate argument is, aside from that 20-0 run that the Warriors went on, that 18-0 run to start the third quarter of Game 2, have the Raptors not dominated the bulk of this series?
Yes.
They dominated. They won Game 1, I don't want to say handily, but they won it pretty comfortably. They were in control the entirety of last night's game. In Game 4, they had their opportunities. They just could not hit shots in that fourth quarter once Klay went out. Like, they were up 7 at halftime. They were up 5 at halftime of game number 2. The Raptors have been the team that's been in control the majority of minutes in this series. By the way, similarly to how Portland was in control the majority of the minutes of the previous round, Golden State just won all the games.
Very similar to the Portland, but Portland's role players couldn't make plays. As we saw in last night's game, Toronto's role players were making plays, and Kawhi Leonard, their star, played a lot better. We've seen 12 quarters of basketball. We have more than a sample size of who's who. In 10 of the 12 quarters, the Raptors have outscored Golden State, a lot like the Trailblazers. The only 2 quarters they've been outscored in, Game 1, Game 2, in that magical third quarter.
Tuesday on Fox, all eyes will be on Alex Morgan, Carly Lloyd, and Megan Rapinoe as they lead the U.S. women's national team against Thailand in group play. Coverage begins at 2 Eastern. All matches of the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup will be live on Fox, FS1, and streaming on the Fox Sports app. Check out these awesome jerseys. Women's fit, so I'm hoping you guys put them on.
Oh, this
These
is
are
great.
Awesome cuts right here.
Oh, that's nice.
Absolutely, with our names on them. Appreciate
Oh, yeah,
that.
this is definitely
Team
one of the
USA.
better gifts that they've ever given us. This is nice. This is something that I can use this.
That,
I like it.
You see the numbers, right? So, Jenna, you and I both got 19 because
Yep.
this is 2019 World Cup.
Yep.
But my man, Chris Carter, 80.
Always
Always
be
going to be
80.
80.
Always gonna be
You
80,
get the
CC.
customized.
Hey, they didn't get your name right because you should have put my sister's name. Since you named my sister, it should have been Nick Carter
So
Wright
awkward, this
or Wright
conversation.
Carter something.
I
I'm
will
going to
be
gift this to some kids.
your
Wearing
sister-
Some
I will
big-time
also be
soccer
giving
fans
this
going to
to
be
kids.
wearing this.
6
I was like,
years
I'm
old
going to be
and
wearing
lives in
this all
Atlanta.
day until he said that.
Yep.
How did I marry her?
I got
Guys,
one
the
that's getting
whole
out of jail,
marrying
too,
your sister
in case this
conversation is weird.
current situation don't work out.
Anyway, awesome jerseys. Thank you so much. Get
That
ready for
reminds me,
some
I'm supposed to
soccer.
go visit her.
Weirdos. Time for stories to start your morning. Steph Curry was forced to essentially be Golden State's entire offense last night. And he did about all you could have asked of him. 47 points in the loss, the second most in a losing effort in finals history, behind LeBron's 51 in Game 1 last year. See how impressive was Steph last night?
Oh, so impressive. He's got such a big heart. Because in this, man, you don't have to put yourself out there. People say, oh, why don't you have to put... He don't have to shoot shots like that. He didn't have to come out there and shoot 30 shots. Man, he tried to win this game. He tried to snatch this game. He only needed a little bit of help, and, man, he ran out of gas at the end of the game. But Steph Curry, I've already had a tremendous amount of respect for him, but last night, that was a classic game. I'll always remember that game, Nick. It was special.
And I know hero ball, especially in today's NBA, it's almost impossible to win a championship that way. I know there's more efficient ways to play basketball, but man, it's fun to watch. The old school, listen, I'm the best guy, can't trust my teammates, I got to do it all. Steph led him in points, rebounds, assists, steals, minutes. He was so good last night, just not enough.
Hero ball is back in, but it just got to be the right hero. It got to be KD, LeBron, or Steph.
Absolutely.
Them the only guys we're willing to watch do that.
He was so good last night, man.
Moving on to Boogie Cousins. He had a strong game 2, but had a weak game 3. Just 4 points on 3 rebounds and 19 minutes of work. Had to leave the game early. He is expected to be fine. Nick, what'd you make of Boogie's struggles?
They're not that unexpected. I think it would have been more surprising had he duplicated his game 2 performance than to have this performance, but they are concerning if you're Golden State. Andrew Bogut cannot play more than a few minutes per game in this series. Jordan Bell has been played off the court defensively in this series, right? Kevon Looney is now out for the series. So unless they're going to play real small, they're going to need Boogie. And last night, to me, is more indicative of where he's at in his recovery than game 2 was.
Yeah, let's not forget, missed 45 days with that quad injury. You don't have the type of stamina it takes to play in the finals, Jenna. His workout routine, how much conditioning has he been able to do? Because it's a lower extremity, it's hard to keep your wind up. His lift, he never was
Never had
above
good lift.
And I mean, last night, you could slide a pizza box barely up under him from the time he jumped when he was trying to shoot. Not a good look last night.
That's a great visual. To Toronto now, Kawhi Leonard led the way with 30, said he'd need his role players, and last night they delivered. Big night for Toronto, starting 5 with each scoring at least 17 points. CeCe, how impressive was their balanced effort in the win?
Oh, they were awesome. They've done this a number of times this year, though, Nick. You talked about how the starters scored 106 of the 123 points. 6 times before last night's game, the starters had scored 100, Jenna. They had won all those games. And last night, now they're 7-0. Tremendous for this team. We knew that Kawhi needed some help. He delivered a more steady performance, but the story was Kyle Lowry. Green from 3, Van Vliet from 3, Serge Ibaka on the defense, Marc Gasol getting them started early. This was a championship effort last night by the Raptors.
And while the team effort, understandably, is going to get the headlines from the Raptors' perspective, I do want to focus on Kawhi for a moment. He had his most efficient game of the series, and you mentioned in Game 1 and Game 2, the Warriors won the third quarters. In Game 3, they did not. You know why? Kawhi had 15 of his 30 in that third quarter where he played all 12 minutes. He helped fend the
That was a
Warriors
quiet
off.
15. I didn't even, and I'm Kawhi's official stat guy.
Right, yeah, you're Kawhi's official guy, and it was, when you pointed out that Van Vliet started the third quarter, I looked into what happened in the third quarter. 2 guys played the whole quarter, Van Vliet, who had replaced Danny Green to start the second half, and Kawhi. Kawhi gave you 15 in that quarter. It was huge.
All right, moving on to Klay Thompson. He was a late scratch for Game 3. The Warriors missed him dearly. Klay reportedly really wanted to be out there, but the training staff ultimately made the decision not to play him, hoping to rest him for Game 4 on Friday. Steve Kerr addressed the decision not to play Klay.
The whole point was to not risk a bigger injury that would keep him out of the rest of the series. So that was the decision we made, and I feel very comfortable with it. Never would have forgiven myself if I played him tonight and he had gotten hurt. So you live with the decision. You make a wise decision, the wisest one you can, then you live with it and you move forward. So the good thing is Klay has done well the last 2 days. Now he's got another couple of days to heal. Hopefully he'll be out there Friday.
See, you think that they miss Klay more on offense or on defense in this one?
Well, before I say if they're missing him on offense or defense, people probably wonder, well, what's the difference in game number 4? Oh, their season's on the line in game number 4. Why Steve Kerr wouldn't play Klay and why he would be more cautious with him in game number 3, because they could get through that. Their season wasn't on the line. Game number 4 at Oracle, their season will be on the line, and he'll be forced into the lineup regardless, or Klay will force himself into the lineup. Klay's a spectacular player, and I believe it's easy to argue both sides of it. But from a defensive standpoint, one of the biggest adjustments they made in game number 2 was they put Klay on Kawhi. And Kawhi's not healthy. He struggled a little bit. As far as being efficient, turning the ball over, when they were double teaming, he wasn't the playmaker that we had seen. So defensively, those minutes immediately went to Draymond Green. First quarter, I was like, who's going to guard Kawhi? Draymond Green was guarding him, tracking him all over the court. So that takes away from Draymond's offense because the amount of energy he's got to exert on the defensive end. Remember Siakam, game number 1, he went off. They put Draymond on him. He cooled him off. They put Draymond on Kawhi in game number 3. He wasn't able to do that. You need a rotation. Iguodala, Draymond, and Klay to be able to slow down someone. So for me, I would just argue a huge part of the game, not the biggest part, Klay being missed on defense, because Golden State with Steph and the way he played last night, they just needed a little bit of shooting, but they needed a bunch of defense, Nick.
If you'd have told Steve Kerr right before tip-off you're going to score 109 points, will you take it?
Yeah.
How do you feel about your chances?
Yeah.
He said absolutely. They scored, by the way, Klay played games 1 and 2. They scored 109 in game 1.
Yeah.
They scored 109 in game 2. Scored 109 in game 3. It's an odd number, but it's the number that they've been stuck on in this series for good or for bad. The difference between games 1 and 3 and game 2 is game 1, the Raptors scored 118 to their 109. Game 3, the Raptors scored 123 to their 109. They needed him defensively. Yes, of course, they would have shot better from 3 if he was out there. I understand there's a butterfly effect on everything. But because Steph went supernova, they got enough points.
Yes.
47 combined for Steph and Klay would be a bit of a down game, but only like 7 points beneath what they're averaging, the two of them, in these NBA playoffs. So it's the defense. It is that Draymond, he is less impactful playing on Kawhi than he would be as playing free safety. Iggy,
Yes.
who is clearly still not 100%, his job gets harder defensively. Steph, who had to do everything offensively, his job gets harder. Defensively, they have so many fewer answers. And it really, to me, helped show the impact Klay has, I think, to a broader audience who look at him as, oh, he's one of the 3 greatest shooters in the history of our league. Mm-hmm. He's maybe the greatest heat check guy in the history of our league. All that is true. What's also true is he is a lockdown defensive player, and he's a guy who's been snubbed multiple times for all defensive teams. He was upset this year. He felt he got snubbed for the All-NBA team, but that's because there's money attached to it. What he does defensively gets forgotten because Draymond is such a great defender and such a demonstrative defender. But Draymond meets people at the rim. Klay prevents guys from getting shots off. So you don't really see it until you break it down. Second Spectrum can tell you a lot of the ways Klay can impact the game defensively. I thought the Warriors had enough offense last night. What they didn't have is enough defense in any quarter of the game. The Raptors scored 36 points in the first, 36 points in the third quarter. Those were the quarters that they really missed Klay Thompson.
And the reason why they'll go down as the greatest backcourt ever is because he's the perfect combo guard for Steph. Because he takes that heat off of Steph, who he's got to guard. So In last night's game, we know Steph, you say, oh, offensively it didn't affect him. Well, you don't know that. If he had Klay out there, he might have gone for more than that, because it takes something out of your legs when Steph has to guard the primary ball handler or someone who is on the tackle on the offensive end.
But even if you get him back with that hamstring, you're not going to get full Klay Thompson on defense for Game 4.
No, you're going to need the other guys play better defensively. I still think he will be an upgrade defensively over what they have, but they're going to have to change a lot. But I am certain, with a healthy Klay Thompson, Danny Green and Kyle Lowry do not combine for 41 points on 14 of 26 shooting. It flatly does not happen. The 109 points should have been enough. It wasn't, because the Warriors had their worst defensive game since the Clippers series of these players.
FS1 is your destination for the day's best sports shows. Tune in for the biggest personalities on the biggest stories. We get you started here on First Things First. Catch it on Monday through Friday, only on FS1. Talking Game 3 with Chris Mannix. Warriors were without Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, and that meant Steph Curry was forced to essentially be the team's entire offense last night. Steph did about all you could have asked. 47 points in the loss, the second most in a losing effort in finals history, behind LeBron's 51 in Game 1 last year. Chris, how impressive was Steph Curry last night?
He was extremely impressive. Not just the 47 points, but 8 rebounds, 7 assists in that game, and he flirted with the triple-double all night. I mean, he was effective. The efficiency of how well he played, 14 for 31, that's a great number for a perimeter shooter. And you have to think about exactly what the Raptors were doing to him defensively. I mean, they were sending multiple bodies at him all night long. The one body that was usually assigned to Klay Thompson, he was floating over, whether it was Danny Green or somebody else, onto Steph Curry to give him something else to look at. And that's been a challenge for players in the past, guys with less experience. When they're seeing multiple bodies in front of them, that can flummox them. But Steph Curry just made shot after shot. He just didn't have anywhere near the type of help he needed to get to win an NBA Finals game.
How special was he? One of one, Nick. One of one in all NBA
history.
45, 5, and 5 with 5 3-pointers. No one's ever done it. That's how special he was. We had never seen that type of performance. But to me, it's just not the numbers. It's not the shots. We know he can shoot. But last night was a confirmation. Well, how good of a shooter is he? He's the best shooter ever off the dribble. He's the best shooter ever off the pick and roll. He's the best shooter ever off a pin down. Whatever you need him to do to shoot the basketball, he is the best at it. It was on full display last night. But where I don't think he gets enough credit, people think that he's soft. He's not a good defensive player. He's athletically a little more challenged than some guy. But it takes a tough guy to be able to do what he did last night. It takes some guts. Man, he played 43 minutes, Nick. And if he would have had to play, if they would have had those last couple minutes where the game was still being contested.
He was on pace to play 45.
It was truly, truly what you want to see with the greats in the game. Back against the wall. And you don't have to put yourself out there like that. You don't have to shoot shots from 30 feet. He could play more conservative. But no, he didn't. He went down shooting, and it was a classic, one of the icons of the game when he's remembered. You have to look back at this game and be like, wow, man, they lost that game. But Steph Curry was super special.
And Steph doesn't need to be vindicated. He's already one of the all-time greatest players in the history of the league. And as you mentioned, the way he is the greatest at every type of shooting, it's the only athlete I can compare it to is Gretzky-esque. Like Wayne Gretzky was whatever type of offense you needed in hockey, everyone's fighting for second place behind Gretzky. But there has been, for some people, a question of, well, okay, so we know how great Steph is, but how great would he be somewhere else? How great would he be if he didn't have Klay Thompson? And then once KD came over, of course, but Steph Curry last night was on a regular NBA team. In fact, that Warriors team out there last night, given the injury that Boogie had because he wasn't fully himself, if you remove Steph Curry, that would have been a bad NBA team. And he drops 47 on a great defense in the NBA Finals. And it reminded me of what we've seen from LeBron throughout his career, which is, man, I'm going to go down. I'll go down shooting. I'll be the best player. You mentioned near triple-double. Steph led his team in points, rebounds, assists, steals. Not enough. You remember in 2008, the year after LeBron took the Cavs to the NBA Finals, playing your Boston Celtics, the only Game 7 LeBron's ever lost, 45, 5, and 6. Not enough. The next year, had lost 3 straight games to Dwight Howard and the Magic. In those games, 49, 6, and 8, 41, 7-9, 44, 12, and 7. Loss, loss, loss. There's an element of, and we know against these Warriors how many epic performances like that, where Steph had never been on this side of the coin. And it's one thing to experience the loss, but another thing for Steph to be on that side of the coin and say, oh, I can do that too. I can at least in a moment put my team on my back and keep them alive, because they weren't blown. He didn't get 47 in the game that they were down 25 throughout, and he was softer defense. The Raptors were trying to stop him as best as they could because it was a 7-point game so many times, and he was still making them pay repeatedly.
If Steph looked like Russell Westbrook or any of the other kind of prototypical middle linebacker type of point guards, he wouldn't be subject to the type of criticism that you're talking about. Every criticism of the, quote, softness of Steph Curry, it all kind of traces back to the couple of years he had ankle injuries and the size of his frame. I mean, I think people still look back at those early years and see Steph battling through ankle stuff and question his overall toughness. But this is still the same guy that carried a mid-major college team deep into the NCAA tournament.
A shot away from the Final Four.
Exactly. The same guy that, you know, before Klay Thompson, before that team became great, was putting up big-time numbers. I think if you put Steph Curry on Orlando, Charlotte, one of these other teams, he would be either the MVP or a top 3 MVP every single year, and it wouldn't even be a discussion.
And last night, for my guy, Nick Wright, he's been arguing this, and no one loves the NBA more than Nick. I got to give him that. No one, I've been following him since I was a kid, but no one loves the NBA more than him. This is what he's been yelling about. He wasn't upset that KD decided to go to Golden State. It was because what the NBA fans have been getting robbed of. We only have maybe 5 guys, 6 at the most, that could do what he did last night in some form or fashion.
And now it's not forced out of him.
It's not forced out of him, and that's why we're also looking forward to free agency. Kevin Durant leaving is going to be a great thing because we got guys. Harden, we see it with Houston. We've seen it with Kawhi. We've seen it with LeBron. We see it with KD. This NBA is in great hands, but Steph Curry, that's Nick Wright's argument.
And now we've seen it. Like, I understand in today's NBA, it's almost impossible to win a championship this way. But hero ball is enticing. It's exciting. It is what a lot of us came up watching in the 90s when a lot of people feel the NBA was at its best, the 80s with Magic and Larry. But then in the 90s, it was a lot of one-man bands. It was Chuck had good players around him in Phoenix, but it was Chuck. Akeem early on, he didn't have great players around him in Houston. It was Akeem. David Robinson. Shaq with Orlando until Penny became a great player. Jordan obviously had Pippen, but there were so many guys where it was, how are you going to win? Well, your best guy better go for 40. He better play 44 minutes. He better do everything. And then we've lost that thread a little bit. It's fun to watch this.
But is it duplicable? So now he went out and he scored 47 because he absolutely had to. He played all those minutes because he absolutely had to. What kind of Steph Curry are we going to see show up tomorrow night now?
I think you'll see a less efficient version of Steph Curry. I think he'll still give you 30-plus, and he'll still shoot well from beyond three-point line. But he had a game like this, and they still lost by double digits. I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of some of the stuff LeBron did in that first go-round against Golden State when Kyrie Irving was out, when Kevin Love was out. There's some shades of that to it. It's not about, to me, it's not about Steph Curry. I think even if he has this type of performance, they are going to lose unless Sean Livingston does better, unless Andre Iguodala does better, unless even Draymond Green does better. They need more from outside of Steph Curry.
In that first go-round against Golden State, Game 1 of the finals, the Cavs lose. LeBron goes 44, 8, and 6. Game 5. 40, 14, and 11 in a loss. Game 6, lose the finals, 32, 18, and 9 in a loss. It is, but again, you know when, I have this whole sheet of LeBron's like biggest games and losses in the playoffs.
I'm stunned by that. Do you sleep with that?
No. I meant it came for today's show. You know where none of them exist? When he was in Miami. When he was in a situation, not the same, but similar to what Steph's been in throughout his career. Steph now all of a sudden had it forced out of him, and it is great for Steph to be able to show everybody, I got this, that this is in me. Klay has shown everyone he's never had to be the best guy on a team, but he's had these marvelous playoff moments. Steph, it was as good as a guy can play in a loss and as vindicating as a loss can be.
I know what Jenna's talking about. She's not talking about the numbers. She's not talking about Steph the MVP. She's talking about from a cardio, from his body standpoint, those extra minutes. He's the only one averaging 41 minutes in this final with Klay being out, with KD being out. Do you believe it's going to affect him? And we do believe it's going to affect him, especially in Friday's game after what he gave up last night.
And it's a fair critique because not just of what he's had to do in this series or in the series prior with Kevin Durant out, but the totality of the last few years, playing in 5 consecutive NBA Finals, that has a long-term wear effect on him.
Tiger Woods returns to Pebble Beach, the site of his most dominant major. The U.S. Open begins next Thursday on Fox, FS1, and the Fox Sports app.
Tiger and Koepka, Sunday pairing. U.S. Open on the line. That's my pick.
Here with Chris Mannix. We're going viral, Mannix. Last night, the Raptors were clicking on all cylinders and were able to win Game 3 against the Warriors, sending their fans into a frenzy. Check this out.
I thought I saw a Bismack Biyombo jersey in there, but
they had a party now. They were well represented. It's nice.
Can I tell you, Raptors, like the actual anthem at Raptors games in the playoffs, they crowdsource the whole thing now. Like, I don't even know why they have an anthem singer. He starts it out and then just lets the crowd take over.
Oh, really? When they sing "O Canada"?
In the playoffs, yeah.
That's great. Well, that's because everyone only knows the "O Canada" part, and then everyone else just sort of hums along. But that's what
in Canada, happens. I'm pretty sure they know it maybe better than we do. I'm told by our stud producer Dave Ermacher in my ear that is a big move in the National Hockey League. That's
crowdsourcing.
The crowdsourcing national anthem. A guy gets it started, and then the crowd as a whole sings it. So the Raptors, Canada's basketball team, has adopted.
I don't have a problem with that. Did you call Dave a stud?
I like Dave.
Okay, well,
absolutely.
Dave's a bit
He's
of a
your
stud,
golf partner.
Yeah.
He's a stud. Dave Ermacher.
There you go.
We're on Game 3
I got
now.
words for him.
Toronto dominated a depleted Warriors team. 123-109 was your final last night. Raptors lead the series now 2-1. They were massive underdogs when the series started, but now the teams have even odds to take home the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Mannix, who has the edge at this point going into Game 4?
I don't think you can look at this series and say that Toronto is not the favorite. I think the Raptors should be the favorite going into this Game 4 and for the rest of the series. They regained home court advantage, which is big to a degree, but we know what we're going to get out of Toronto. We think at this point Kawhi Leonard, not 100%, but 85-ish%, and we know we're going to be able to get out of him the rest of the series what he's given up until this point. Fred VanVleet, ever since he had his baby, has been fantastic for the Toronto Raptors. They are what they are. They're a complete product out there on the floor. I don't know what Golden State's going to be every single night. I believe Klay Thompson's going to come back for Game 4, but I believe he's going to be run ragged and tested every single time on the defensive end. I don't believe Kevin Durant's coming back in Game 4. I'm still skeptical that he'd come back in a Game 5 because of the nature of that injury. And if he doesn't, how do you bet on this Golden State team? Now, Jeff Van Gundy said on the broadcast last night, and I'm not sure I agree with him, but he said that team out there on the floor was not a playoff team in the Western Conference.
You're sure you don't agree with him?
I don't agree with him.
That was wrong. I love JVG. He was totally wrong. It's disrespectful to Steph Curry.
It is, but the point is, it's a team that doesn't belong anywhere near a finals matchup. And Toronto is. Like, Toronto, all along, I believe going into the playoffs, they were the best team in the Eastern Conference, hands down. They were a team that had playoff depth from all the years they got beat by LeBron in the postseason, and they had finals experience. Kawhi's a former finals MVP. They've got guys, Danny Green played big in postseason.
Serge
Ibaka's played there before. So this team is not a flash in the pan, the Raptors. I think they're the favorites, and they should be.
Well, when you say they're not a flash in the pan, they said something during the broadcast that struck me off guard, and then I was like, oh, I guess, of course that's right. Golden State Warriors over the last 3 years have the most wins in basketball. That surprises no one. You know who has the second most wins in basketball? Not Houston, not It's Toronto.
Yep.
Toronto over the last 3 years, they just hadn't been able, they didn't have the superstar to go eye to eye with LeBron in those playoff runs. They then got him and LeBron left, and so they took their rightful place, even though obviously I thought Milwaukee would be the team here, but they went through Milwaukee. They have now won 6 of 7 games against Milwaukee and Golden State. Think about that. The two teams that were the favorites to come out of each of their conference going into the playoffs, even if they weren't your favorite, the Vegas favorites. So I understand Toronto is not a fluke, and they are healthy, and they are playing great basketball. And Chris, you pointed out there's been 12 quarters played. Toronto's won how many of them?
10.
10 of the 12 quarters in the series they've won. The reason I think Golden State is still the favorite just by the slightest of margins is this. Do we believe they're going to win Game 4? Because I do. And at 2-2, if the series not at 2 games apiece, where Golden State has held off Toronto, I think that Golden State resumes their status as 60-40 favorite. So I'm baking in a win in Game 4 at home. I don't think Toronto is going to go to Oracle and steal both. I understand Klay. I don't think KD's going to play either, and Klay won't be 100%, but I think having him out there will be enough to get them over the top, and I don't think it's realistic to expect all 5 Toronto starters shoot 50% and go for 17 plus in the next game. But this is the closest the Warriors have had to deal with since Durant's been on the team, and Durant obviously right now is on the team but not playing for the team.
This is very, very difficult right here because Golden State, you want to respect them, but you don't know who's going to be there. And based on the last month of basketball, I would have to say I favor Toronto Raptors. They're far more predictable. We see their role players, even in spot duty right now. We saw Serge play well. So we don't need him to play well every game. Every other game, if he shows up, makes a contribution, we don't need Danny Green to knock down 5 or 6 threes every game, but we just need him to play a normal. All their players are back to playing. What are we going to get from Iggy? Man, he looks tired. All right, his legs, like you can tell that the season's worn on him. Draymond, I expect him to be able to bounce back. But this is my biggest concern. Golden State wants this to be a 7-game series. I mean, because they're not going to win 3 games in a row. But you know what we're doing after every game now that's going to be played? We getting ready to travel. So after Game 4, they're going to get on the airplane. If KD tries to play, which he's not, Klay tries to play, he's got all that soreness that he's got to get in the airplane, and anyone involved in athletics will tell you your body does not heal as fast when you're traveling as you were if you were stationary and on the ground. Long flights, and then after they play game number 5, you know what they're going to do? Get on a plane and travel again. So for me, even if KD comes back, Game 5, Klay in Game 4, huge advantage to Toronto. Kawhi, we know what tendonitis is. We know the form of treatment. He's only going to get so much rest. Kyle Lowry is going to play pretty good, probably every other game. They probably don't need much more than that. Huge advantage, I believe, to the Raptors with home court advantage, and that you're traveling every game now. That's not good for the injuries that the Warriors have.
Did it surprise you that the odds are even now for these two teams at this point in the series?
I don't see why they wouldn't be just because of the injuries. And look, if you're Toronto, the confidence you must have going into Game 4 has to be at an all-time high. Because, yes, you lost Game 2, but you got to feel that you lost Game 2. Because you went into that third quarter and you were missing a ton of open shots on your home floor, shots that you usually make in that particular situation.
Maybe just as simple as this. If Nick Nurse calls a timeout earlier.
Yeah.
Compared to allowing that run just to go.
All the timeout at the 14-0 run, when it was a 14-0 of the 18-0, if he does it at 7-0, you think it maybe goes.
But I think you make the best point. Open shots, if they're open, they're always going to be open. They got open shots Game 1, they made them. They got open shots in game number 2. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I look at Lowry, and this was a huge bounce-back game for him. To have the Game 3 that he had, and look, you look at Steph Curry's performance and say, well, Kyle Lowry didn't play any defense. I thought he played really well overall in that game. And if he can give you anything close to what he gave you with that type of play, that's a game changer for Toronto because he has been a mixed bag at times during the postseason. This guy is the key to everything they do with Toronto winning.
And maybe it's just too much of what I've seen from Golden State over the last 5 years that I feel like they should be favored in every series they play until they've lost. Like when Jenna told me this morning the series odds came out and it was even, I thought you had to be wrong.
Of course.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't believe it. I thought Golden State, even down 2-1 in the series, because they were very significant favorites going into the series, and Vegas knew KD was injured and knew Golden State didn't have home court advantage. So when Vegas had them favored there, they knew it was on the board that through 3 games, it'd be 2 games for the home team, 1 game for the road team, which is what it is right now, even though it's coming in odd order.
But how do you objectively look at Game 4 and say hobbled Klay Thompson and this same group that played Game 3 and give the Warriors the respect of being the favorite there? I'm with you that as a completed team, they should be considered the favorite every series they play in. But whatever Klay is going to be, it's less than 100%. I don't think you can look at that and say, yeah, sure, they're the favorites in that Game 4.
Oh, well, Vegas agrees with the favorites in Game 4. They're about 6.5-point favorites, I think, in Game 4.
Golden State is.
Golden State is. So you can make a lot of money right now if you want to bet on Toronto.
Yeah.
I think Golden State's going to win Game 4, but the toughest thing Golden State now has is the math against them. There's 2 ways to win a championship. Win 3 straight games or win a Game 7 on the road. Those are the only 2 paths they have, and now maybe you look back. You played Toronto twice this year, and I know this is super Monday morning quarterbacking, but one of those games, Kevin Durant scored 51, and you lost. Another one, Kawhi Leonard didn't play, and you lost. If Golden State had won either one of those games, they have 58 wins, Toronto has 57 wins, and Golden State has home court in this series, and then maybe it's a little bit of a different path for them.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.